with them.
Did anybody further up get in trouble besides you? I'm kind of like, haven't read the book thoroughly, but did the firewall stop and it didn't go to anybody?
No, it did. It reached into the New Hampshire Republican State Committee because the executive director pled guilty and served 7 months in incarceration. And Jim Tobin, who was the RNC's regional political director and the NRSC's regional political director, and later the Bush-Cheney New England campaign chairman, was later indicted, tried, found guilty, sentenced to a fine and 10 months in prison, appealed, reversed and remanded on appeal, and is now going back to trial. February 5th.
You'll be there.
Well, I'm sure I will be to testify. Yeah, I'm sure they'll use the book as a way to malign my character and dismiss me as a witness. But and he's living a nightmare because this thing's never ending for him.
He can't work, right?
Who knows? I mean, I've heard
he's
that.
Probably getting a salary.
Well, there was an allegation that his wife set up a consulting firm and was getting paid.
Yeah.
This may sound strange, but I'm empathetic to what he's going through. I'm not sympathetic because I think he needs to go through it, but I am empathetic because I've been through it, and anyone who's been through that process knows it's a very unpleasant thing.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It's tough on the person. It's tough on their family. I mean, it's not, I read a lot of blogs and I'm like, that guy should go to prison forever. People are crazy.
Yeah.
People need to lighten up a little bit. We send way too many people to prison, and after they do their time, we should say, you know what? The guy did his time. He deserves an opportunity. This is probably not something I would have said before I went through this, because I was a very law and order guy, but these things do change you as a person, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. So you think the drug laws are pretty bad?
I think they're awful. I mean, I had a bunkie who was 25 years old doing another 25 years for third offense possession. That's awful. That guy's got no future. It's just terrible. Yeah, the drug laws, the sentencing laws. I think the sentencing opinions coming out of the Supreme Court, I think, are very good. It's a good sign. The changing of the cocaine, the crack disparity, I think that's a good thing to do. Yeah, I think we
get rid of the mandatory minimums.
Get rid of the mandatory minimums. I mean, what purpose do they serve? And get rid of the silly stuff about, I mean, we're getting to the point where we're saying, take your inmates, stick them in a barrel somewhere, put an IV in their arm, and don't let them exercise, read, do what. I mean,
the whole Zimmer amendment.
The Zimmer stuff, yeah, which is in the book, which is my revelation.
I saw that.
Yeah, and that was when I had the revelation of, it's kind of like that ad. I don't know if you've ever seen this ad on television, but the guy's flicking the switch on the wall, and he's like, "Honey, what does this switch do?" And he's like, "I don't know." And down the street, it's like hitting somebody. It's the garage door, and it's hitting the hood of someone's car. Well, that was me in politics. I was flipping all these switches without really any thought to the impact they were having on somebody else that I would never meet in life, have a real life impact on them. Particularly the minimum mandatory sentencing, the truth in sentencing stuff. Serve 80% of your sentence. I mean, that's horrendous.
Yeah,
it's a horrendous strain on our system, on the taxpayer, but just in terms of a human value. I mean, we imprison more people than Russia and Canada combined.
Yeah.
That's a terrible statement.
Yeah, well, we kill more people than most countries too.
Sure. I used to be a big proponent of the death penalty, but I just, I don't see the role there. I mean, I know the argument because I used to make the argument, but I've just changed my mind.
Craig was the same way. He was a big proponent, then he started actually looking at the issue and saying, "Wait a second, this is wrong."
Yeah, it was
it's
the
wrong.
internet. I was on a death penalty forum on the internet, and just exploring it, I came about ended up changing my mind.
Yeah. Well, so that's good. I mean, that but anyway, so I did become a big proponent of just what our country's doing in imprisoning so many people. It's not the right thing.
Is this? Do you think this might get exposure, like maybe 60 Minutes, get on the national scale a little bit more? Because I don't see it as big as on national scale as people should be exploring this on the news, 60 Minutes and whatnot, about the little firms that are going around doing all these little dirty tricks and stuff.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, that is. I think there's an interesting, like, for instance, we were talking about. You said earlier, what do you do about DCI? And I think sometimes these things just kind of work themselves out. If McCain becomes elected president, now that's not to say someone else isn't going to take its place, But the DCI's, DCI probably fades away. Its influence will wane because it won't have the influence that it once did. And I think there's something larger going on in the country. I think just people are looking to repudiate what they feel are the worst things about the Bush administration. I think I said this earlier, but in my mind, that's Iraq and Katrina, and they just look at that and they go, "That's not who we want to be." And
yeah, when you talked in here about going right up to the bright line of the law and just stopping short of it, reminded me exactly about the Valerie Plame case. And they looked at it and they realized they could get really close and expose this person. And it seems that's been a pattern that they love just going right up to the edge of the line.
Yeah.
It's always been in politics and politicking, getting someone elected, but in actual politics, once you get inelected, that dictates policy. About dancing up to the line.
Yeah, I'll give you what I think illustrates that a little bit. I've never understood why we went into Iraq. I just never have. I was all for Afghanistan. I understood Afghanistan. I just never got Iraq. And one of the reasons is because when I watched Secretary Powell, unfortunately, who I think, other than this was a poor moment for him, but otherwise he's just a true blue American hero type. I mean, he's tremendous. But in this one instance, I remember watching that. I remember Tenet sitting behind him. I remember, his presentation, and he's pointing to maps and satellite photos and all this stuff. And I just remember thinking, this is no different than an orchestrated political press conference. Meaning, they had their objective, and they were just. One of the things you do in politics is, what you want to, the point you want to make. You've poll tested it. You've tested it in the way you want to present it. Now you got to bring people around to understand how you're presenting it. I can tell you something that with your own eyes is not true. But if I present it with facts and figures and I substantiate it, I will win you over, and you will say, well, that makes sense. I understand that. And that's being persuasive. So, and I say it in the book, if I ever made an attack, I would have, what I used to call the info slam. It was a sheaf of data to back up what I was saying. So I would make the allegation or the charge, and then the reporter might say, well, can you back it up? And I always wanted to be in the position of being able to say, yeah, now go put 100 pages in your fax machine. It's going to take 45 minutes to send over everything I got. So I would just overwhelm you with information. You'd say, well, I may not agree with him, but his facts back it all up. And that's what I saw in the Powell presentation was they've just put this compendium of fact. They're trying to overwhelm us with fact. And I just don't buy it because it just doesn't make sense to me.
So in your opinion, the lead up to the Iraq War and making America buy the Iraq War, to you, looked like an election campaign being run?
Oh, yeah.
Very soon?
Yeah. To me, it had all the hallmarks of a presidential campaign or just a political campaign.
You don't market a new product in August. Didn't Ari Fleischer say something?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, that's time. That's dead time. That's everyone's at the beach.
No, but she's meaning you market a new product.
Like war.
Just like war.
Yeah, well, sure, yeah, but but of course that's what you have to do because you have to bring the country with you. You can't go off to fight a war and the country's like, where the hell he's going? Slow down, man, come back. I mean, you can't, because that, basically you need Congress to get behind you, and so you need to build a swell. And at that point, I mean, all you're doing is you're manipulating the emotional responsive chord in America because you're just saying 9/11 and then people go crazy and now people have had a time to reflect. But in my mind anyway, and that's not everybody, but in my mind anyway, that's what I saw in that presentation. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, I'm not buying it. I just never understood it. So.